Good morning. We'll call the September board meeting of the Board of Regents to order at this time. Before we do the recognitions this morning, we want to take a moment on this day of September 11th to remember what happened 14 years ago during this hour in New York, Washington, D.C., as well as in Pennsylvania. The statistics and the fatalities of that day are staggering. 2,996 people lost their life. Hundreds were injured. Over $10 billion of property damage estimated happened on that particular day. 343 firefighters lost their life, 72 police officers, as well as numerous citizens. I would respectfully ask that we as a Board of Regents and those in attendance, if we could pause for just a brief moment of silence and remember that day and those who lost their life and those who were injured. Thank you very much. We'll begin today's meeting by recognizing new Regents professors, R. Lawrence Edward, Vipin Kumar, and Michael T. Osterholm. And as an editorial, Dr. Osterholm and I attended Luther College together. I believe he's 2 years younger than I am, but we did know each other and commend him for his great work within the university community and greater community as well. President Kaler will also introduce the Dean of the College of Biological Science. President Kaler, will you please join me at the podium?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the board, it's my pleasure and honor to recognize our three newest Regents professors, R. Lawrence Edwards, Vipin Kumar, and Michael Osterholm. Established in 1965 by the Board of Regents to recognize the national and international prominence of faculty members, the Regents Professorship is the highest honor the University of Minnesota bestows on its faculty. It recognizes faculty who have made unique contributions to the quality of the University of Minnesota through exceptional accomplishments in teaching, research, and scholarship or creative work, and contributions to the public good. With these three, there are now only 29 current Regents professors, and in the history of the program, among the thousands of scholars who have taught and created new knowledge at the University of Minnesota, only 99 have been named Regents professors. It's a rare honor. First, Larry, please join Regent Johnson and me here at the podium. R. Lawrence Edwards is the Robert D. and Carol C. Gunn Professor and Distinguished McKnight University Professor in our Department of Earth Sciences of the College of Science and Engineering, and he is a world-renowned geochemist with expertise in climate history, climate change, and geochronology. For more than 2 decades, he has made significant contributions to science and society through his research, teaching, and service, and has made the University of Minnesota a globally recognized leader in climate science. He's known for his role in the development of modern uranium-thorium dating methods and his application of those methods to the study of climate history and ocean chemistry back as much as 500,000 years ago. According to the ISI Web of Knowledge, Edwards is the second most cited Earth scientist worldwide for papers published in the last decade. That's remarkable, by the way. He's a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, a member of the National Academy of Sciences, a fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and has been elected to the American Geophysical Union, the Geochemical Society, and the European Association of Geochemistry. He's also a wonderful university citizen, most recently serving on Provost Hansen's Grand Challenges Research Strategic Planning Committee. Professor Edwards' career is exemplary, and we're fortunate to have him as part of our intellectual community. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Let's take a photo. We're going to make singles. Okay. And now Vipin Kumar. Vipin is the William Norris Professor and head of the Department of Computer Science and Engineering of our College of Science and Engineering, and is a world-renowned computer scientist and an extraordinary mentor and educator with an outstanding record of service to his profession and to the University of Minnesota. Considered the founder of the field of scientific data mining, he has played a pioneering role in bringing so-called big data together with a community and scientific communities to address one of the societal challenges of our time, understanding the impact of human-induced changes on the Earth system and its environment. In another area of Vipin's innovations, ISO-efficiency analysis enabled car crash testing software to be executed efficiently on highly parallel supercomputers. Over the 3 decades of his productive academic career, his grant support has totaled more than $80 million. He's been elected a Fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the Association for Computing Machinery, and the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. Described as an inspirational teacher and advisor, Vipin has mentored and advised 33 PhD graduates and over 50 bachelor's and master's graduates who are already leaders in the field at the top academic institutions and industry labs around the country and the world. Amid all of that, he's the head of our highly ranked Department of Computer Science and Engineering. The university is truly fortunate to call Professor Vipin Kumar one of our own. Congratulations. And now Michael Osterholm. Michael T. Osterholm is the McKnight Presidential Endowed Chair in Public Health, the Distinguished University Teaching Professor in the Division of Environmental Health Sciences in the School of Public Health, Professor, Technological Leadership Institute in the College of Science and Engineering, and an adjunct professor in our medical school. His business card apparently is 3 by 5 inches. That's a lot of titles. He also directs the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy. A distinguished scholar, researcher, and educator, Mike has served as a pioneer in the research and control of infectious diseases throughout the world. He has been a premier international leader regarding the use of biological agents as weapons targeting civilian populations. He is among the world leaders in developing a global, integrated, comprehensive, flexible, and rapid response to the Ebola epidemic in West Africa. And he's provided a critical leadership role to governments in the Middle East to develop an effective control measure for Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS. He's considered to be one of the nation's foremost experts on issues of food safety and the investigation and response to foodborne illnesses. Among other honors, he's a member of the Institute of Medicine of the National Academy of Sciences and of the Council of Foreign Relations. And additionally, he has volunteered countless hours to assist the University of Minnesota Foundation in fundraising activities. Professor Osterholm exemplifies the qualities of a Regents professor in every way possible. Mike, congratulations. You want all 3?
Yes.
I'll invite you.
goodness, stop it.
And now, Provost Hanson, would you please join me at the podium for our next introduction?
Thank you, President Kaler and Chair Johnson and members of the board. I'm very pleased to introduce the new Dean of the College of Biological Sciences, Dr. Valerie E. Forbes. Dr. Forbes, will you join us up here? Dr. Forbes is an accomplished scientist and administrator who comes to the University of Minnesota from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where she was the director of the School of Biological Sciences from 2011 to 2015. Before that, she was the founding chair of the Department of Environmental, Social, and Spatial Change at Denmark's Roskilde University, where she was also a professor and dean of natural sciences. At the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Dr. Forbes advanced a productive framework for interdisciplinary research and teaching in the biological sciences. She emphasized stronger ties among the biological subdisciplines, as well as expanded collaborations with quantitative fields, with the aim of increasing understanding of biological systems and solving major societal challenges related to food, water, and energy. She played a key role in implementing a new life sciences curriculum and in planning and securing support for state-of-the-art teaching labs and other facility improvements. She also oversaw a comprehensive review of her school's academic programs, led a graduate program restructuring, improved faculty mentoring, and implemented a strategic hiring plan for faculty and student services. Throughout her career, Dr. Forbes has also maintained a high level of productivity as a researcher and as a teacher. Her scholarly work, which is highly interdisciplinary, focuses on ecotoxicology and ecological risk assessment, providing a scientific foundation for assessing chemical risks to ecosystems and human health. Dr. Forbes rose to the top of our national search for a collaborative and visionary scholar, leader, and educator to serve as Dean of CBS. We will look to her to continue the tradition of excellence and innovation that has defined the college and made it one of the country's leaders in the biological sciences. We know she will advance a strategic and implement a strategic vision that will further enhance the college and the university. This will include nurturing close partnerships with the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resource Sciences, the College of Science and Engineering, the Veterinary Medicine, and the Medical School, as well as with other colleges and with external stakeholders. Valerie, I'm delighted to welcome you to the University of Minnesota. So if you would like to say a few words, that would be terrific.
Thank you, Karen, for your very kind welcome. I'm delighted to be here and delighted to have a chance to meet all of you. One of the wonderful things about coming into a college like CBS that excels in pretty much every metric is I don't have to spend the first 6 months fixing problems, but can get right to the fun part of figuring out how to make a strong college even stronger. The expectations for biological science to deliver are high and increasing in all key areas: health, food, water, environment, energy. And this means that our science has to become more quantitative and more predictive. I think the days of the single investigator toiling away in isolation in their lab are long over, and the future of biology is really about collaboration, and that's very much central to my vision for CBS going forward. I've been on the job 6 weeks today, and my plans for the coming few months are: first, we're going to be launching a Grand Challenges in Biology postdoctoral program, which I hope will kickstart some new collaborations in some of these key areas, both within CBS and also between CBS and other colleges across the university. We are taking steps to optimize the administrative support functions of the CBS departments on the St. Paul campus to improve support for our faculty and students there. I'm going to be in serious listening mode this semester, spending time with each of our departments, visiting faculty meetings, setting up meetings with our students, grad students and postdocs and staff. We've got several capital planning projects in various stages of development, which I think are very exciting, particularly on the St. Paul campus. I think we've got a lot of opportunity and a lot of need. And finally, we're gearing up to celebrate our 50th anniversary with a celebration on the 3rd of October at the Bell. You've all been invited, and if your schedules allow, we'd love to see you there. So with that, thank you very much.
Yeah, we went there. That's very good. Thank you. All right, good.
So it's okay? Yeah, it is. It's right. I'm glad you. I read it. Yeah, no, you're right. It's the motion was not second. In which should be a question for the main motion. So then it's yeah, floor. Correct.
Again, we congratulate our honorees this morning, and thank you for your good work. We'd seek approval of the minutes at this time. Would motion? So moved. It's moved, and a second by?
Second.
Been seconded. Any discussion on approval of the minutes? Any discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Mr. President, we look forward to your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With students, faculty, and staff across our system beginning a new academic year, we certainly have much on our plates and a lot of work to get done. I look forward to tackling the initiatives of my 2015-16 work plan, which I'll share with you at the conclusion of my report. And I'm eager to work closely with you on the areas you have emphasized, including completing a progress card which will track signature goals. And we'll be discussing that progress card in a few minutes. Other goals you have set out are to have my senior leadership team work more closely together and to enhance our image and brand with special attention to promoting our impact in Greater Minnesota. And that's a good place to start as I report to you all I've been working on since we were last together in July. I visited legislators, staff, alumni, and students in Albert Lea, Austin, Clearbrook, Crookston, Moorhead, Red Wing, Waseca, and Winona, and met with leaders of our agriculture community at Farm Fest in Morton and Redwood Falls. Helping students move into their residence halls on our Crookston and Twin Cities campuses was especially enjoyable, and in the Twin Cities case, exceptionally sweaty. Many of you joined me last week at Convocation for freshmen on the Twin Cities campus, where the atmosphere was truly exciting. And after looking around Mariucci last Thursday, I wanted to learn more about the incoming class of 2019 across all of our campuses. And here are a few facts. Our Twin Cities class comes from 37 countries, 43 states, and 1,347 different high schools. The most popular male first name is Matthew, and the most popular female first name is Emily. Two of our regents will be glad to know that there are 64 Johnsons, 43 Andersons. At Crookston, we have a Devine. At UMD, 2 Lucases. And in the Twin Cities, a Cohen, 2 McMillans, 2 Simmonses, a Lucas, and 2 Shoes. And Michael Shoe reported yesterday that that's good because everybody needs a good pair of shoes.
It's like Groner.
But here's, he did tell me that. But here's a far more remarkable stat about our incoming Twin Cities class of 2019. 82% of them say they plan to participate in volunteer or community service work of some kind. 82%. And across the system, we also know that at D, the Swinson College of Science and Engineering, which helps prepare the talent force for the region and state, has seen impressive growth, with enrollment now topping more than 3,100 students. At Crookston, Chancellor Wood welcomed more than 40 new international students from, among other countries, Australia, Bangladesh, Brazil, Canada, China, Egypt, Korea, Nepal, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, and Vietnam. At Rochester, we know that while we're still young, UMR welcomed its 9th set of siblings on campus this year, and that more than 27% of the incoming class is comprised of students of color. That percentage of students of color is about the same at Morris, where we saw a record number of applications and where 40% of our incoming students are first-generation college students, which is a wonderful statistic. That sort of good news was accompanied by other breakthroughs over the past 8 weeks, such as a $2.4 million contribution from the Richard Schultz Family Foundation to fund the life-changing work of Dr. Jacob Tolar, the director of our Stem Cell Institute. Or the record 16 startup companies our faculty research generated this past year, making for 57 new companies over the past 4 years. Or our launch of Core 2025, a new program to reach down into the 8th grade of our public schools to inspire young students of color, particularly males, to aspire to go to college and eventually to recruit them to become our students. Or as our strategic plan implementation unfolds, there have been about 130 ideas submitted involving more than 350 faculty from every Twin Cities college for our Grand Challenges research topics. And our Grand Challenges curriculum is off to a great start, with 5 courses this fall and 2 more on the books for the spring semester. My involvement in national intercollegiate athletic policy matters has intensified as my role as chair of the Council of Big Ten Presidents and Chancellors and as a member of the NCAA Division I Executive Board, which leads to comments about athletics on our Twin Cities campus. This is the first board meeting since the events which led to the resignation of the former Gophers athletic director. Much has been written and said since then, and for today I have a few thoughts. One is that I eagerly await the conclusion of the independent external review by 2 respected attorneys who are now conducting interviews and other examinations around these events. I thank all of you for your valuable input on the process, and I know we are in a better place because of your guidance and support. Openness is the only way to handle such challenges, and we have been as transparent and open as the law allows. If we learn from the external review that we need to make changes in Gopher athletics, we will do so promptly and thoughtfully. Secondly, I have great confidence in interim athletic director Beth Getz, who has stepped into her role with smart and steady leadership, and I thank her for that. Thirdly, and most importantly, I've had time to think about the prevalence of sexual harassment in the wider American society in the year 2015, and how this incident at our university is a reflection of, unfortunately, what is an everyday experience for many women have in workplaces across Minnesota and the nation. No matter where such conduct occurs, it is unacceptable. But at an institution that strives to be non-discriminatory in every way, to be a place where we pride ourselves on equity, this has hit home even more painfully. We live in a world where sexual harassment exists, and when we see it at a university, we must stop it. We must support those women who are harmed by it and ensure that the climate and resources exist to aid them in coming forward. As the new school year begins, I trust we'll move forward as a community, and as we do, I urge that all of you and all of our students, faculty, and staff remember we learn, teach, and work at a remarkable place where we create life-changing knowledge and we prepare the next generation of leaders. But when we do that work, we must treat each other with respect and care. That surely has to be on our list of goals for the coming academic year. Finally, in closing, let me mention the recent decision of mine to make a change in our Office of Information Technology. I decided it was time for that change, and Vice President Scott Studham agreed to step aside and resigned last week. I have great confidence in OIT's interim leader, Bernie Golachek, who's been with the department for nearly 3 decades. We'll be working closely with him and OIT leadership and staff to identify their needs before we make a decision on departmental leadership and its future direction. With that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my remarks, and the board staff will distribute to you now my 2015-16 work plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. President, members of the board, report from the chair. It is wonderful to see the students back in classes and feel excitement that comes with the start of the new academic year. 1 week ago, we enjoyed participating in the new student convocation with 8 other regents. It was an energetic and exciting event for the class of 2019, and we were honored to be a part of that occasion. Following our last board meeting in July, the board traveled to Red Wing for our retreat. It was an opportunity to step back from normal work and think about our priorities for the year ahead. I wanted to share briefly our priorities with you today. First, raise national profile of the university's academic health sciences and guide evolution of the mHealth partnership. Secondly, oversee implementation of the UMTC strategic plan, monitor progress toward operational excellence goal of $90 million in administrative cost reallocations by fiscal year 2019, and identify additional opportunities for transformational change within the university. Thirdly, establish principles and objectives to govern campus enrollment, strategies, graduation targets, tuition aid philosophy over the next decade. Define and give voice to the university's 21st century land grant mission and demonstrate its impact on all corners of Minnesota. And finally, create a vision to guide long-term development and change in key areas of campus and bring UMTC master plan into alignment. These priorities are intended to assist the president and senior leadership team in advancing their work and guide the board's agenda, planning, and development throughout the year. We look forward to making progress in each of these areas. Next on our agenda is the receiving and filing of reports. We then move to the consent report, and I would entertain a motion in a second to receive the consent report. Is there a motion? So move. Been moved and seconded on the consent report. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion prevailed. Now we turn our attention to administrative policy on sexual assault, stalking, and relationship violence. While the changes to this policy have already been implemented and do not require board action, I appreciate President Kaler's request for the board to ratify the revised policy at this meeting. We appreciate the work that has been done since the board's July 8th meeting to clarify language and build consensus among students at the Twin City campus and to postpone implementation until we could obtain legal review from our general counsel. President Kaler, could you briefly walk us through the changes that were made? Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And before I detail the policy languages, detail the language changes in our policy, I will review, as you request, the process on this important matter. I think you all recall at your request at the July meeting of the board, we delayed implementation of the policy and sought further review by our Office of the General Counsel. And in the wake of this legal review, additional and clarifying language was developed and added to the policy's appendix. This language was shared with the board and with all 3 student government groups on the Twin Cities campus. And that language is modified, includes these words, and I'll quote, "University policy requires affirmative consent between individuals engaging in sexual activity. Affirmed consent is defined as informed, freely, and affirmatively communicated willingness to participate in sexual activity that is expressed by clear and unambiguous words or actions. Clear and unambiguous words or actions are those that are freely and actively given by informed individuals that a reasonable person in the circumstances would believe communicate a willingness to participate in a mutually agreed upon sexual activity." End of quote. So at the request of leaders of the Minnesota Student Association, the Professional Student Government, and the Council of Graduate Students, and with the authority granted by the board chair and vice chair in a letter to me, the new policy with the clarifying words was implemented in August. That immediate implementation was granted to avoid confusion and unnecessary delay, and so training and education programs could begin before the start of classes. And this has been a productive process. The board's attention to this issue has resulted in a better policy, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate the involvement, guidance, and advocacy for this policy by our student government groups. They were critical in the development and now implementation of this policy, and I thank the leadership of our student organizations. With that, Mr. Chair, I'm asking for a motion to ratify this policy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would seek a motion at this time.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. We have before us the administrative policy on sexual assault. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Regent Hsu.
I'd like to also thank everyone for going the extra distance on this. I think we ended up with a better policy, and I do believe that we need to continue and focus on the disciplinary process, which I believe our Academic Student Affairs Committee is taking on in their agenda. And I hope that we continue to monitor this new policy to see how effective it is. And lastly, I think since we are a research institution, we should probably use this as a research project, because doing my own research on affirmative consent, it's so new that there isn't a lot of research on it, and maybe we could be an institution that delivers some extra value to the entire country on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Hsu. Other comments? Other comments? Oh, Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and everybody for their work on the policy. I think rather than hoping that we monitor, I want to make sure that we expect to monitor on this, just to get some feedback on how it's working, how it's not working, and so we can walk forward with our eyes wide open.
Thank you. Regent Devine.
I'd like to just echo what's already been said, but I'd also like to pay note to the fact that the student participation in this helped drive some of the change that came about here, and their participation and their activity in helping to advance it and educate us and the institution about the broader issues, I think is well taken, and I commend the efforts that all of them have put forth to make this all come about.
Thank you. Further discussion? Further discussion of the motion before us? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion prevails. Next on the agenda is the formal review of the work to develop the university's progress card. The progress card will allow us to focus attention on a limited number of strategic and measurable goals that establish a roadmap for the future. Beginning with the board's work session in May and following continued discussion of the board's July retreat, President Kaler and his team have proposed ambitious goals across a number of areas. President Kaler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As members of the board know, we've been working for many months to develop a robust yet accessible tool for measuring our progress against key metrics. We started talking about this last spring, articulating the value of such a tool, and over the summer there were additional conversations to refine the key metrics and the 6-year goals. And in July, I shared with you a draft progress card, and much of your feedback has been incorporated into what I present to you today. Specifically, at your request, we added goals related to our land-grant mission and employee engagement, and a second measure of strength in the health sciences. I'm comfortable with the card you are about to see, and it is complete with one exception, and that is adding a measure related to inclusive success. You will see that we do have a measure tied to Pell Grant eligible graduation rates, which is a measure of economic diversity, but it has limitations. It's not reflective of our overall culture, but only of undergraduate success. Our vision for diversity, my vision for diversity, calls on our university to aspire to be an institution in which equity and diversity are woven into all we do and infuse our thinking, policies, and practice throughout the organization. So we are still working to identify reliable data around one or more of the following: a measure related to campus climate and the experience of students, faculty, and staff of color; a measure related to competency, such as implicit bias training and supervisory training; or a measure related to increasing the diversity of our campuses, including our faculty, staff, and students. Clearly, some of these areas are tough to measure, and there are some legal limitations on certain measures. But I want to ensure our progress card reflects our commitment to a diverse and inclusive university, and I plan to add a specific measure in one of these regards between now and October when you act on the final card. Turning back to the progress card as a whole, tracking our progress in this way, I am convinced will make a meaningful difference and contribute to the upward trajectory of this university, which, by the way, is undeniably an upward trajectory. By adopting the goals articulated in this progress card, we will establish clear and ambitious shared goals. I believe this reflects the board and my vision of academic and operational excellence, and I very much appreciate the collaborative nature and spirit of this process. I'm joined at the table by John Stedlin and Lincoln Carlson, who particularly Lincoln, will be my phone a friend if you have difficult questions around the data. So let me review. The purpose of the card is to focus governance oversight on a limited number of measurable goals and trends that define and drive excellence. A roadmap for the future. It clearly sets out where we aspire to be in 6 years. It'll inform and help align operational metrics and implementation of the strategic plan. It will be, in a real sense, our North Star. It'll help focus governance in moving the organization forward, and we plan to reference it frequently and update it annually. It's important to keep our eye on both what's happening right now and where we're going. Now, we are proposing two types of measures called, oddly enough, gold measures and maroon measures. The gold measures are, simply put, things that we can largely control and that are clear indicators of our academic quality and organizational excellence for organizations like ours, large public land-grant research institutions. The measures have reliable data sources, and we're able to set clear goals and measure them over the next 6 years. And by keeping these goals as our highest priority, they'll influence a range of decisions across the institution, and focusing on them will enhance our excellence. Next are the maroon measures. They are, I would say, more directional in nature. They illustrate for us trends rather than set firm goals, and these things are important to monitor, but importantly, the university alone cannot influence them. So let me describe for you the specific gold measures, and there are 9 of them, and you have a handout because this chart is a bit of an eye test otherwise. Our goal is a focused set of key measures. I want us to resist the temptation today to add to these numbers of measures. You, as a board, will want to do that, but we have a finite number of things that we can measure. I think these distill where we want to go. Of course, we will welcome your input and discussion on those. The first 2 gold measures address our 4-year and 6-year graduation rates on each of our 5 campuses. Now, the university system counts as a successful completion a student who enrolls at any University of Minnesota campus and graduates from any University of Minnesota campus in a given time frame. So the 4-year graduation rates reported in 2021 will be based on the 2017 entering cohorts, and the 6-year graduation rates in 2021 will be based on the 2015 entering cohorts, that is, this year's cohort. The provost and the chancellors on our system campuses have set stretch goals for their individual campuses given incoming student characteristics, the availability of degree programs, and peer comparisons. And graduation rates are here because they're a clear measure of an institutional commitment to student success. Improving retention and graduation is also good for our institution's health. The next goal is the 4-year graduation rate of Pell awarded students in the entire university system. Ideally, financial aid would not be a barrier to graduation. Financial need would not be a barrier to graduation. But Pell eligibility can also correlate with other graduation risk factors, such as being a first-generation student. And our aspiration for these students is to aggressively bring their graduation rates up. The proposed goal increases the graduation rate of Pell awarded students at twice the rate of the proposed growth rate for the student body system-wide. This goal is important because it ensures we are focusing on the success of all of our students and serving people from all economic backgrounds as part of our land-grant mission and our role as the state's flagship public university. As I mentioned earlier, I do believe we need additional inclusive measures. The next gold measure addresses concerns about the cost of higher education by measuring the total amount of student gift aid system-wide provided by the university. Gift aid includes need-based promise scholarships, admission scholarships, collegiate department scholarships, athletic scholarships, Regents scholarships, and graduate assistant tuition benefits. This measure does not include state or federal grants, student employment, or loans. While I would agree there is no correct level of institutional gift aid, the university has a long-standing commitment to making education as affordable as possible for our students, and increasing gift aid through fundraising and institutional resources is an important strategy to fulfill that commitment. And the goal represents a 3% annual increase in institutional gift aid through 2021. Next goal measure is straightforward. It reflects our research mission by increasing R&D expenditures. Though this measure includes the many sources of institutional R&D funding, the largest source continues to be federally sponsored funding. I remind you the federal investment in sponsored research has been flat for several years and is predicted to remain so for the foreseeable future. Despite this, the Office of the Vice President for Research has proposed a goal that would increase our R&D expenditures by nearly 5% by 2021. As the state's only comprehensive research university, it's our responsibility to create new knowledge, cures, treatments, and solutions for the state, nation, and the world, and this is one measure of our success in doing that. Improving our medical school has long been a shared goal of ours. And here we look at what is still probably the most widely used measure of medical school excellence, National Institute of Health funding. In 2014, the University of Minnesota's medical school received about $145 million in NIH awards, ranking it 30th in the country. For reference, the University of California San Francisco Medical Center was the top-ranked school in the country with $480 million in NIH awards. Senior Vice President and Dean of the Medical School, Brooks Jackson, shares our aspiration to return to being a top 20 medical school. For reference, the 20th ranked school in 2014 was the Baylor College of Medicine with $191 million in NIH awards. So reaching that level is an ambitious goal over a relatively short period. The number of faculty awards is the next measure, and that quantifies the number of prestigious national awards received by our faculty in the arts, humanities, sciences, engineering, and health fields, and these are measured annually by the Center for Measuring University Performance at Arizona State University. This is a measure that can be variable from year to year, but the university desires to maintain its place among the top 10 public research universities with regard to these prestigious awards. That ranking goal requires approximately 25 to 30 faculty awards annually, and the numeric goal of 35 or more faculty members with annual awards aligns with our strategic emphasis on recruiting and retaining field-shaping faculty. Nationally and internationally prominent scholars attract the world's best students and win competitive research dollars. They will make our great university even greater. Next is a measure of participation in the Employment Engagement Survey across our system. Although our participation is already high compared to other higher education institutions, we propose to increase participation by 1% each time the survey is given. Most large organizations focus on driving participation as a best practice, as that in itself reflects engagement. Finally, there's operational excellence. I set a goal of $90 million in cost savings over a 6-year period from FY14 to 19. The cost savings are identified annually in the budget process and must come from administrative activities, not mission or mission support activities, such as research, instruction, or public service. That $90 million goal was always ambitious, and it remains so. These are not the only measures the university cares about, but in general, if these measures are going in the right direction, I believe many other things at the university are going in the right direction as well. And if one of these measures starts to head the wrong way, we represent it not as a failure, but as a warning that should prompt us to understand why we're not as successful as we think we should be. Now let me turn to the maroon measures. Again, you have a handout of these. These are important trends for the institution to monitor over time. We have less influence over some of them, but we will monitor them. The measures include increasing our incoming freshman ACT scores, recognizing our unique role in graduate education in the state, to specific OpEx activities such as reducing greenhouse gases and maintaining a solid credit rating. And I'm not going to walk through each one of these specifically, but I want to highlight a couple. The operation is to maintain our commitment to these activities at essentially the average of the past 4 years. So there certainly is a wide range of trends to follow in the maroon measures. So together, these measures and goals, this progress card, I believe will provide great value and guide us on budget and program decisions. For example, meeting our graduate rate goals could inform decisions on, among other things, advising, admissions, and course requirements. Meeting our research and development expenditure goals will inform decisions about academic or financial investments. Faculty award goal will drive program priorities and faculty development programs. So I'm confident that this progress card will have an impact across our organization in ways that are exciting and important. For you on the board, you will have many chances in committee presentations throughout the year to dive more deeply into many of these measures and sub-measures that support them. and there's plenty of time to better understand how they're influenced and what the university is specifically doing to try to move a measure. So today, I believe, is just the beginning of the conversation, and I look forward to a series of lively conversations. And I also should stress that upon adoption of this progress card, these will not be the only things we measure and report on. We measure many, many items of importance, tracking quality, and will continue to do so in the future. So with that, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'll propose 2 questions to kick off our discussion. Are these the right goals, and do they represent a shared vision for the university in 6 years? So with that, open for comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we call Mr. Kelson, I'd like to call on Regent Rick Beeson for comments. Regent Beeson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I've been thinking about this, even up through the President's comments, it strikes me that this is an exercise that is really at the beginning stage, and I expect and I hope that the measures that we've identified will really prompt more questions, both as to how this is organized as well as what the goals are and the specific metrics. I expect that and maybe what we need to do next month is, not give it a stamp of full approval, but a preliminary approval. We're going to have discussions about budget and about enrollment and other major policy areas. They're going to populate these goals. So the goals we really put down are intended to have you focus your attention on, but as we go into the winter and the spring, some of these numbers may change. We've got this back on the agenda in February or March again, but I do believe that goals drive behaviors, and that it's easier for a board to sort of react to something that's at least been framed up, rather than us trying to collectively construct something out of that which doesn't exist at all. As the President said, I think from a board standpoint, we should expect that the implementation of the strategic plan should contain many, many, many administrative metrics. Not that we're going to see those, but we need to know that those align with these, because for these to be successful, the staff has to own these and have to drive them in a much deeper and more specific way. I don't expect that if we go around the table, everybody's going to have questions about things that aren't on here, so this is a hard document, I think, to get unanimity around. But I would ask that as we look at it, if it meets most of your goals, then we can move forward together with it as a document. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Beeson. Mr. Callison, further edification for us on this matter, or should we move to discussion?
No, Chair Johnson, I'd appreciate the discussion.
Okay, we want to thank you and your staff for all the work that you have accomplished on this report, and we look forward to continued working with you. Regents discussion. Regent Simmons, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. First of all, thank you for incredible work behind this. And I'm not going to propose a change, but I am going to make an observation. We have said at this board and at the university that we aspire to have an extraordinarily good medical school. I'm all for that. And we've said that we would define quality based on quality patient care, education, and research. And I would just point out that this particular metric only measures the research mission. It's a hard objective number because it's NIH dollars, but it doesn't tell us anything about the quality of the practice, the success of the performance in the marketplace, or reflects education only a little. And that number can be highly skewed depending on how many researchers you have and what kind of research program. So it is not a reflection of the quality of the medical school. It's a reflection of the amount of NIH funding, which is an important thing.
Thank you. Regent Devine.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased that we've moved in the direction that we have with this tool dashboard. I think that it's an important step forward for the institution as a whole. I look at this and say, although it's certainly not yet in a perfect format, we're at the start of a process of a road of trying to develop measurable reporting tools that will be available to this board and boards of the future. And more importantly, I think there's an accountability that comes with this tool so that we are reporting to the faculty, to the staff, the legislature, and for the people of Minnesota. They're going to have a fairly concise way of measuring progress that we've made in moving things forward. And I look at the continuity of what this report is over a long period of time and say there's going to be a tool that we're going to be able to look historically and then measure on what we want to be doing in the future. So although imperfect maybe as it may be at this juncture, the point is we've taken the first step of many steps down the road to create something that I think will be very important for the institution as a whole. And I'm very pleased with the effort of the president to lead this initiative and the staff that's worked very, very diligently to put the materials together that look just like a few numbers, but a significant amount of work that went in behind this to get this to a simplified form for all of us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Devine. Regent Omari, please.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Big thanks to all the units that have been working on this, and appreciative of the President's opening remarks about diversity and inclusion, because we all know if we're going to be excellent, it will require diversity and inclusion. I'm curious and interested in some of the potential to be cutting edge around graduate education. I don't want to throw in 50 measures or even suggest that many, and maybe would like to suggest 3 potential time to degree. I fully recognize the nuances around every graduate program and that they are all extremely different. However, I think there could be some creativity perhaps around time to degree where it fits and where that is appropriate across the university. Something as simple as an identifiable mentor or some sort of support, perhaps one publication by the time of graduation or something of that sort, I think would be some creative and innovative ways to boost the graduate experience as well as continuing to boost the university in its ranking and other recognition.
Can I respond to that?
Thank you, Regent Omari. President Kaler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regent Omari, absolutely. This is a dynamic process, and I fully expect that we will add goals and maybe take some off as we move forward. We have struggled with graduate education goals simply because, as you alluded to, the heterogeneity of the programs is such that it's tough to get one size to fit all. You might remember I was on the National Research Council committee to rank and rate graduate programs, which was about a 5-year process to produce a report that absolutely nobody liked, but there you go. And time to degree was an interesting metric. People cannot even agree whether a longer time to degree is a good thing or a bad thing. You might think it's a good thing to get a degree more quickly, but if you're an anthropologist and need to go do field work and learn a foreign language, that takes time. So that one is tough. Something around national awards for graduate students, the number of NSF fellows we get are good. But that's a work in progress, and it's exceptionally difficult to put metrics around graduate programs where creative work in the humanities or the arts is what's produced. So I take your comment, and it is front of mind.
Thank you, President Kaler. Regent Rocha, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My response to this is the same as last time. I think it's great. I think it's a great start, and I know there was the statement that it's hard to get consensus on something like this, but I think you actually may have the ability to, because you have the ability to add measures that are reasonable without it becoming an unwieldy document, and I think this is a fantastic start. And in fact, I think this exercise alone has really helped orient my thinking a bit of not only where we need to focus, but where we've had substantial success. One kind of housekeeping matter is as we talk, especially when you talk about dollars, is having a legend on here that describes whether it's actual dollars or inflation adjusted. That would be helpful to me to understand where we're making progress. But you mentioned in your report today, and I appreciated the comment about increasing our relationship, communication, et cetera, with Greater Minnesota. A couple of metrics on here that I think are relevant and would be helpful, not necessarily oppressively placed, would be recognizing our in-state non-resident balance, something that reflects this is the percentage that we are. You know, we've talked about it, and so certainly having that on here without necessarily at this time saying we shall have X number, but just kind of understanding where we are and knowing that more is better if it's balanced with some of these other considerations up to a point of becoming sterile and overly homogeneous. And I think another metric that I would like to see, if it's something we could develop, would be recognizing within our in-state resident students is the balance between metropolitan population and greater Minnesota population. Because I think just seeing where those numbers are will help us know how to create that emphasis, and to me that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Regent Rocha. Further discussion? Regent Broad, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't want to add anything to the report, but I want to challenge us to speed up one of our metrics. And I'm looking at the participation of employee engagement survey. And I understand that in higher education this is a good rate. I would challenge us to press it further. I think about the fact that we have 60% of our budget that goes to our human capital, and yet 68% of our human capital is engaged. And so I would either like us to compress the time frame to that 68% or to reach higher to 75%, which is kind of the average for all entities, not just higher ed.
Thank you, Regent Broad. Regent Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thank you all for all the very hard work that is behind this. And what strikes me and what I really like about it is the clarity. I mean, I think that it really is something that's very clear whether we add or subtract. For me, right now, it seems that it's really captured the main important things that the board wants to consider, and I appreciate how clear it is and how helpful it could be.
Thank you, Regent Cohen. Regent McMillan.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I just quickly want to pick up on a comment Regent Rocha made, the value and importance of gaining some level of comfort and workability around some metrics we don't deal with all the time, and particularly metro to outstate students, I think could then be put to good work in a tuition strategy session as well as we think about how we're trying to tackle some of these things. So the better and more comfortable we get with some new metrics, so to speak, they're not really new, but if we get to use them and they get built into this or not, ultimately there's other uses for them as well. So,
thank you very much. Regent Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I think this is wonderful work. I think it gives us a great idea of where we're going and how we're doing getting there. I would add that once we go through some of the other discussions later on this year involving things like enrollment strategy and tuition and those types of things, that maybe we could add some metrics such as the ratio of NR to resident student in terms of tuition dollars. And then also in terms of once we determine what the true capacity of our programs are, you know, how we're doing in terms of that with a goal of being at 100%. So, thank you.
Thank you, Regent Hsu. President Kaler.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I would agree with the range of comments that have been made in the past few minutes. Certainly, we can monitor and report on, you know, any zip code aggregation that you would like us to do, and I think that's actually important. And we do focus on increasing the non-metro population. It's just important to do. It's the right thing to do. And I would also say that I do fully expect, I think we all do, maybe I'm stating the obvious, that as we go through our discussions around budget and enrollment management, that some of these targets may in fact change. And that's okay. That's the purpose of this, is for us to arrive at a collective agreement between the regents and the administration about what our goals are. And then it's my job to work towards them. But as a governing board, it's your job to help set them.
Thank you, Mr. President. Further discussion on the progress card. Further discussion. Regent McMillan.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I wonder if it's possible to actually overload Director Kelson with metrics.
Yes.
I wasn't sure it was, but...
I would, if I could, Chair Johnson,
Mr. Kelson,
I have appreciated the conversation. And part of the art of this, obviously, is, and I think the President's being pretty successful with this set of measures, because it does prompt more questions. So how do we really measure the success of the medical school, for example? And I'm hoping that having these in front of us on a regular basis does spur Regents to ask in committees and other venues, well, tell me more about what this high level, what does this high level measure really represent, and how do you, and go to the sub measures in committees and other venues. Because I do think if this gets too long at this level, it loses its value. But there are plenty of venues to talk at different levels about what these measures represent.
Thank you. Regent Anderson.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Just very briefly, I just want to say, as I was sitting here, I wasn't going to say anything, but I like having this data. The discussions we had yesterday in the full committee about tuition strategy and in-state, out-state, and out-of-state, I make decisions from what I believe is right, but the more data I have to drive those decisions, I think is helpful. And so I think some of the things that Regent Hsu has proposed, I think are terrific to have on there. And again, thanks to you guys for getting us this data. But I think it will be very, very helpful in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge the work of Regent Beeson on this issue. He was an early innovator of the progress card and spent a great deal of time over the last year working on this with the administration. So thank you, Regent Beeson, for your work. Any further discussion on the progress card? Very good. Thank you for a robust discussion. Thank you, Mr. President. We turn now to data security, policies, practices, and roles of the university. We'd ask Mr. Golachek, Mr. Lean to come to the presenters table, and Mr. President, remarks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Information security at the university has been a focal point of the Audit and Compliance Committee discussions over the past year, with a goal to inform and solicit input about the university's approach to information security. And of course, it is a global issue across just about every industry and organization. In fact, on Tuesday of this week, I attended a Minnesota Business Partnership Board presentation by one of the nation's leading cybersecurity experts, and this is in fact a topic on every CEO's mind. So this presentation will summarize the detailed framework discussed by our Audit and Compliance Committee and provide a comprehensive overview of the issues and practices at the university. The goal is to demonstrate a long-term focus on data security and the appropriateness of a risk-based security approach at the university. The objective of this presentation, the subsequent conversation, is for the board to develop a point of view concerning risk tolerance, as well as the cultural cost-benefit trade-offs inherent in investing in additional efforts to mature the university's information security framework. Now, before he makes his presentation, let me say a few words about Bernie Golachek, our interim Vice President for Information Technology. He's widely known through the University of Minnesota system, having served the university for nearly 29 years in a variety of technology roles. He's credited with leading many of the information technology services in use at the university today, and for working effectively across this large enterprise to achieve both individual unit and institutional goals for the use of technologies. I have great confidence in Bernie, his leadership style, and in his ability to make a smooth transition in our Office of Information Technology. So thank you, Bernie, and we're eager to hear from you and Brian. Chair.
Mr. Golachek, welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you. Chair Johnson, President Kaler, members of the board, let me just begin by telling you that it is my privilege to serve in this interim role, and I just want you to know that I am deeply committed to the excellence of this institution and to advancing information technologies in support of its mission. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Mr. Chair, Mr. President, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about the university's information security program and to seek your input as we continue to mature and develop what I believe is a top-notch information security framework. It is tailored to the unique needs of the University of Minnesota's circumstances, but it's done so in the context of an ever-changing and very dynamic cybersecurity landscape. This board session is the culmination of a year-long series of in-depth discussions that we've had with the Audit Committee, covering 3 high-level areas. It's also the beginning of what the President referred to and what I hope is an ongoing dialogue with the board about our posture towards risk tolerance as it relates to information security. I'm fortunate today to be joined by my colleague, Brian DeLynn, who is a tremendous asset and leader in this area of the industry. I'd like to turn things over to him at this point to walk us through a high-level primer of the information security landscape and also the strategy and framework that he and his team have designed for this university. Following that, I will return and summarize the findings of our external review of Brian's program, which the Audit Committee heard about yesterday in its committee meeting. So, Brian?
Before you begin, is your correct pronunciation of your last name Deline or Dolan? What's correct?
DeLynn is correct.
DeLynn?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. DeLynn, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, members of the board, one way to help describe the information security landscape is to discuss the spectrum of adversaries that are in our global environment. On one end, we have individuals that simply make errors in their work. Obviously, these aren't really even adversaries, but simply human beings who make mistakes. A step up from that, you have types of individuals acting maliciously in some way, but their skill sets from a security perspective are fairly limited. Issues related to those types of adversaries are detectable by our controls and often preventable before they even develop. On the other end of the spectrum, we have malicious actors that are sponsored by nation states, and the level of sophistication of these adversaries is extremely high. Due to that sophistication, these types of attacks, we are highly unlikely to prevent or detect them, and we must rely on partnerships with the FBI and other federal agencies to provide us with additional information, correlated information. We certainly work, however, to put in many security controls, both procedural and technical controls, to detect where we can prevent security incidents from occurring. However, we have to be cautious about the types of security controls that we put in place. Both our adversaries and our own users will find ways around those controls if they're ineffective or they're overburdensome. If we take just a minute to talk about the language that we use in information security, I think it will help us provide clarity on some of the upcoming information. When we talk about a security incident, we're referring to any event where there is some reason to believe that the event could have resulted in a breach of private information. A breach, on the other hand, is the confirmation that that private information was accessed and available to individuals who are unauthorized to access the private information. An investigation is the process that we use to determine if a specific security incident may have resulted in a breach. And lastly, a record is simply it represents the information related to one individual. At the university, we track on an average of about 3,000 incidents per month. One of the positive indicators of a security program is that the program is monitoring and evaluating a fairly high number of security incidents. A large volume of our incidents are simply related to those errors that individuals make. In addition, 100% of the breaches that we have occurred, we experienced 22 breaches in FY15, and 100% of those were all related to individuals simply making errors. In addition to tracking security incidents at the university, we collaborate very closely with our peer institutions. We share information about the types of events that each experiences to learn from each other. And obviously, we have many peer institutions who have experienced significant security breaches. The global security challenges that we face are significant, but the security controls and the program we have built at the university provide strong due diligence. While no security controls or programs will prevent all security breaches from occurring, the controls and the programs we have in place help to reduce the frequency of those security breaches, and they help to minimize the impact of the security breaches when they do occur. The responsibilities that we have in information security is to build a program and implement a security strategy that works to maintain an information security program, a program that incorporates risk management, to evaluate the security controls needed, and to balance those controls with the operational needs of the university. A program that also maintains incident management to respond to security incidents as they occur, and a governance structure that provides the appropriate security policy, but allows for flexibility in that policy through the evaluation of exceptions. I'm going to skip a couple of the language slides that we have here, and we'll incorporate these in the next couple of slides, these concepts. To address the responsibility that we have in an information security program, we started working to implement an information security framework. Rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, we chose to follow an internationally recognized information security framework. While there are several valuable types of frameworks available, any framework contains these basic components. You must have an information security policy and perhaps multiple policies to establish the high-level requirements and establish the existence of the program. You must have governance in place that helps to support that policy so it shows that the governance is supportive of it and is supported by the leadership in order for the program to be effective. Additionally, you need information security standards to help support the policy and provide the detailed rules that need to be followed in order to meet the intent of that policy. And then you have to implement controls that are related to those standards. Lastly, you have to have a security risk management program. A security risk management program is also essential because the risk management program is used to evaluate the risks related to the security controls that are not implemented or do not meet the information security standards. And risk management also evaluates the risk related to gaps in the information security standards that may not have been established. Risk management works to prioritize the implementation of additional controls and provide the balance of security controls versus the operational needs. If we think about this pyramid and we look at the red parts of the pyramid as the completed pieces of an information security framework, I believe this is what our pyramid looked like in 2010. Generally speaking, we implemented security controls where security standards existed, but there were a limited number of security standards in place compared to the full array of security standards expected from a completed security framework. The policy structure in place needed adjustment to support a security risk management program and support a much broader set of security standards. Essentially, we did not have a security risk management program in place. We utilized some connections to the compliance risk process, but any other efforts around security risk management were informal. There was good governance that could be used for security processes when needed, but outside of formal policy development process, security governance was connected on more of an ad hoc basis. Today, we've greatly increased the number of information security standards. The institution is now in the process of evaluating the controls that they have in place and implementing additional controls where needed. We've implemented a security risk management program to help the university identify gaps between the implemented controls versus the security standards and to help identify the greatest risk to the university so that we can make informed decisions about addressing those risks and, again, balance that with the financial and the cultural cost of doing so. We've introduced 2 new policies, a data security classification policy, an information security risk management policy, and we've made significant adjustments to an information security policy. We formalized additional governance structure specific to security by broadening the scope and membership of an existing security advisory committee in order to provide guidance to the security risk management program and to ensure significant risks are elevated appropriately. As we work to update our policy and begin the work to improve our information security program, one of the first things we worked to address was our data classification system. Our security controls in the past had been based solely on whether the data was private or public, but the need to have additional variability in the controls placed on private data became necessary. Regulations related to various types of data are different, the penalties around loss of those types of data are different, and the quantities of private data needed to be considered as a part of the data security classification. With the change to the three levels of the data security classification, we then started to adjust our security policy and related information security standards. We have also established 25 new information security standards and attached those to the information security policy. Within each of those standards, we created a much greater degree of detail to provide clarity on the security practices that need to be followed. And each of the detailed rules is in alignment with our data security classification. And with that, I'll turn it back to Mr. Gillespie.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kolchak.
Thank you, Mr. Gillin, Chair, members of the board. That was an overview of the framework that we've put into place, but what I'd like to do now is step back and talk about the context in which that framework has been applied to the University of Minnesota. I believe that at our core, we must provide superior service to the entire university that enables our vital missions of teaching, research, and outreach. Information security supports that across the entire enterprise, taking into account the highly distributed environment in which we manage. What that means is that we've been very purposeful about adapting our strategy to fit the culture. Brian's team works closely with individual unit and collegiate information technology leaders to explain and interpret the standards and help them focus their limited resource on the most pressing and risky security issues. We have broad representation on our Security Advisory Committee that advises Brian and provides governance for the entire process. We are aligned to the information security standards, as you've heard, and also in constant contact with our peers and at times with law enforcement. I have a great deal of confidence in the strategy that we've employed and will continue to do everything that I can to maintain the appropriate focus on applying this institution-wide. Last fall, the firm of Barry Dunn was retained to use a very structured approach to review our program's maturity across a dozen international standard organization standards. They drew on their experience at other schools to help us develop a sense of where we are and where we'd like to go. Part of that, part of what gives me confidence in this framework and the approach that that you've heard about is that it's been externally validated by a firm with expertise in both higher education and in information security. When we refer to a maturity model, this is sort of what we mean. It's essentially a 0 to 5 scale ranking across a spectrum shown here. The range begins at 0 to 1, which means that either nothing is being done or it's being done very informally. A ranking of 2 means that that things are planned, but once things are planned, further maturing, and this is key, is that there needs to be organization-wide adoption to advance along this scale. Ratings of 4 and 5 are even higher levels of quantitatively measuring our results and instantiating continuous improvement procedures. A key thing to understand is that the jump from 2 to 3 is particularly large in the education environment. Organization-wide becomes a challenge in higher ed because of the environment, but it's also a challenge that we can adapt to and will manage well in. 4 and 5 are considered quite advanced and require a degree of additional measurement and controls and investment that may exceed the payback, but that's a management decision that we will eventually make. Some key takeaways from this review: we compare favorably to our peers. We have uncommonly strong foundation in policy and risk management. At the same time, none of this constitutes a guarantee. No matter how mature our program, we will have incidents, and I believe strongly that a risk-based approach is the right one. Chair Johnson, Regents, what I would ask from you as we look forward to your questions in a moment is that your oversight and support of the strategy that Brian and I have laid out for you is there. We need your long-term focus to help carry through the inevitable incidents and even breaches that we see daily on news broadcasts and read about in the newspapers that hopefully not, but may potentially occur here at this university. Your support for the risk-based approach that Brian and his team are implementing with so many other people around the university is the key to our success. With that, Chair Johnson, members of the board, we're very pleased to field your questions and to hear your input. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Questions, comments from the board, please. Mr. Regent Hsu.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for giving this presentation not once, but twice. I saw it yesterday. Half of us saw it yesterday. Risk management is a serious issue, and I think we've been very fortunate so far. I always say it's better to be lucky than good, but not to say that we're not good. I did ask a question yesterday about the amount of money that we spend on information data security, and I believe you gave me a number that was $3.8 million. That seems like a small number to me, especially in context of your overall budget. And I'm not sure what the overall budget number is, but I think 3.8 million is less than 2%. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or roughly correct?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Golchek.
Regent Hsu, Chair Johnson, members of the board, yes, that's an accurate statement. That's an accurate number that you that we talked about yesterday. And we continue to benchmark our expenditure on information security with our peers and with our professionals from the Gartner Association. It's also important, as we mentioned yesterday and talked about in the audit committee meeting, that those are expenditures that we see in the central IT organization. So Brian and his staff account, and the tools that they use account for the $3.8 million per year. In addition to that, we have there are technologists across the institution in the distributed units that work very, very closely in implementing the technical controls that we talked about that are not part of that $3.8 million. So we understand that the $3.8 million is there, but there's effort and therefore dollars that extend beyond the central IT unit here.
Regent Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's always nice to see these presentations, but never are there dollars attached to what it's going to take for us to get from here to here. You know, right now, I believe yesterday you said we're at 2.4 on a 5-point scale. What does it take to get us to a 3 or a 4 or a 5? And, you know, is that something that a university can afford to do? I guess what I'm asking is, you know, this is great to see where we are. Maybe this should be on our progress card in the future. But I think we need to have an understanding of what it's going to cost to be better, and how much better do we think we need to be.
Mr. Golchek.
Mr. Chair, Regent Hsu, members of the board, I agree. I think that those kinds of conversations are the ones that we will continue to have, and that we will use the governance processes that we have in place to determine whether or not we will make those investments. I think that's a great conversation to have, and it's a natural tension, because the greater the investment may also yield diminishing returns. And I think that's where the risk management approach is really critical in this regard. And so we're hoping that through governance and through continuing dialogue, we'll be able to center ourselves around those investments.
I have one more, if
Regent Hsu.
Real quick. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think a couple months ago there was a daily article about some potential breach in the sociology department, I believe. Involving filing of tax returns and maybe the stealing of identities to process fraudulent tax returns. I'm just wondering if that is one of your 22 from last year or this year, and whether or not we were able to determine what happened.
Chair Johnson, Regent Hsu, that is not one of the 22. While that was something that was reported about, that was not something that we could identify as tied back to the university in any way. The loss in having tax fraud issues is a broad global issue across the United States, and that information is in so many different places. It's extremely hard to determine that. We did do investigation to try to determine if the source of that was the university in any way, and we have legal obligations and would have followed those legal obligations had we determined that, but we could not see any connection.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Regent Broad, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the Audit Committee, Audit and Compliance Committee, a lot of the issues that our internal auditor deals with over the year are IT related, and so having our IT and more specifically information security issues before the Audit Committee was a significant step in the right direction. And in fact, Clint Davies, who was the Barry Dunn consultant, indicated that it's a really strong focus that we have. He's impressed by the focus that we have from a board level to information security, just based on our focus on it at both the committee level as well as the full board level. When I think about Regent Hsu, I think you hit on exactly where I think we go next, which is now we have really great information, and the governance question isn't about the information. The governance question is, what is this board and this university's risk tolerance level for the costs and benefits of where we want to be on that scale? And so I look forward to maybe the next steps, and we're likely going to be inviting the 3-part series to turn into a 4-part series because that question is going to be critical for us to answer so that they're able to move forward and have the resources that it will require to drive that compliance level, not just at the top level, but as Regent Simmons often says, all the way down to multiple levels of the organization. So I think this is just a great interim step, and I'm not saying a beginning because they've already been doing a lot of the work over the last 4 years, and I think we're kind of at that place where now we're going to trigger a whole new set of opportunities for this board to engage on our risk tolerance level relative to information security.
Thank you, Regent Broad. Regent Devine.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the report. Very thorough, a lot of new information for a number of us that are not necessarily on the Audit Committee. I think the focus that the Audit Committee and our auditor, Gail Klatt, has done has really brought this up to a governance level this last year, and the committee work under the chair for that committee, the Audit Committee, has really focused an important element of what's going on with us. Yesterday we were talking about some of the future investments in technology on top of those that we have, and numbers, it's $125 million, I think, of investment that the university has made in the last 4 or 5 years in our technology IT areas. So the issues of protecting it is obviously significant. My question really draws in this, nationally a lot of the IT security stuff is all built in and around corporate protection of financial data, and the breaches that, of Target and other corporations is all financially kind of driven. Our larger issue probably is really from the international theft of, as you see it starting to evolve in education in the areas of technology, of proprietary information, research information, and so on. And we didn't spend a lot of time talking about that, but maybe you could talk a little bit about what is it that we within the university need to look at relative to the international, because that seems to be a much more organized, very driven type of slow, methodical theft process that we see evolving now.
Mr. Lane.
Chair Johnson, Regent Devine, The global landscape is the issue. We are operating in an environment in which others who are committed to committing criminal activity do not have to live to the laws of the United States, and so going after those individuals is extremely difficult. But that's a challenge that we have globally, and the University of Minnesota is probably not going to solve that problem all on its own by any means. It's why we have to partner with the FBI and other agencies to help us to identify those issues and how they have impacted us so that we can respond to them and perform that due diligence that we have.
Thank you. Regent Simmons?
Well, thank you, Chair Johnson. I'd like to make 2 points. One is that our most valuable and therefore vulnerable data is really our human data. We've got a lot of identifiers on a lot of people, and financial data, credit card information, et cetera. So in addition to whatever may be of interest to another country in research or defense, it's the human data that's got a lot of street value. The point I'd like to make is, in addition to risk tolerance being a very important consideration here, the other is compliance. And our policies, our controls are only as good as the compliance is. And that means every person complying. And when you don't have to sit long on the audit and compliance committee to recognize that we have some issues with compliance. IT is highly decentralized. And so, as Regent Broad pointed out, I kind of focus on that accountability and responsibility at the local level, at the local user level. And that has to be monitored. And I think that as we look at what our investment is in IT security, it has to include that monitoring function and that expectation of 100% compliance.
Thank you, Regent Simmons. Regent Beeson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, presenters. I'm going to echo off of Regent Simmons' comment. You do have a highly decentralized unit, and it always struck me that your department is one that could be more centralized, and with that, there's potentially some efficiencies, and there's improvements to safety and soundness and compliance. So, and I wish that was a conversation we could have about looking at that. And I don't know exactly how many people you've got working directly to you and how many are dotted line. But as it relates to information security, is this an issue, having this sort of far-flung, highly decentralized group?
Mr. Golchek?
Chair Johnson, Regent Beeson, members of the board, it has become less challenging for us as we've developed the information security policy, the standards, and the specificity behind the technical controls now provide a recipe and a playbook for technologists that were not there 3 years ago before we began this program. So I would say that today Brian and his team have an excellent relationship with the technologists across the institution that are managing those systems that remain out there. Remember that that this program takes into account the different types of data that are managed wherever they are, and it focuses on the high-risk data. We now have an understanding of where that high-risk data is today, where we never had that before. We now have a playbook by which technologists are able to comply with and adhere to the technical controls that are now specified in a way that were never specified before. That said, some of those technical controls are difficult to manage to, and so Brian's team works very, very closely with them. We've changed the rules for the technologists that still manage systems outside of our control. And so therein lies some of the challenge that you're seeing, but we're making great progress in that space. So I would answer by saying, now that we have clarity where we didn't before, I think this is less challenging than it might appear on the surface.
Thank you. Regent Omari?
Thank you, Chair Johnson. You know, two things I want to draw attention to. One is really around the cost that we've been hearing, whether it's a cultural cost, I think it was called on the HISC model, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but then also the dollars, right? Now, I'm very interested to see what those numbers look like beyond the 10 that we saw yesterday as you guys continue to develop that. The other piece is I think back to last December as we started in the audit committee and then out to the full board developing our institutional risk profile from a governance perspective, and I see in the red area quite a few directly related areas, and this to me is an example of how we as Regents drive governance level conversations, and then the administration reacts to it in a way, and then we continue to have these conversations about the mix between governance and then the management side of things. So I think this is a good example of how this plays out, and thank you guys for responding to that and allowing us to drive that conversation.
Thank you, Regent Omari. Further discussion, questions? Very good. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation and your very excellent work.
Thank you.
We now turn to the President's recommended 2016 six-year capital plan. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe we are going to try to do the 6-year and the 2015 together, so we will combine agenda items 11 and 12. Joined at the table by Vice Presidents Wheelock and Fitzenreiter. Mr. Chair, I'm pleased to bring forward for your review my 6-year capital plan and the 2016 state capital budget request. The capital plan includes major capital improvements planned for the years 2016 through 2021, and the capital plan includes projects to be funded with state capital support. Year 1 of the plan outlines the projects that the university will be submitting to the state of Minnesota for consideration during the 2016 legislative session. And in addition, Vice Presidents Fitzenreiter and Wheelock will review our state capital budget request for the upcoming session. Welcome, Mr. Chair.
Vice President Wheelock, Vice President Fitzenreiter, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Regents, President Kaler. We will start today with the 6-year capital plan, and most of you understand and are familiar with this plan. Historically, we are required to update this annually, and the first year of the 6-year plan is also the foundation of our state capital budget request, which we are presenting to you today for review. We will be back in October, both in the appropriate committees and before the full board, to ask for action on this item. Given the nature of the University of Minnesota, a system-wide 29 million square foot institution, there are certainly always opportunities to reinvest in our existing space and extend the useful life of our facilities, and as well the reality that certain facilities have reached the end of their useful life or are not capable of being retrofitted to meet our academic priorities. We try to balance our financial capability with the academic priorities and with the realities of our facility conditions, and make wise recommendations about how to be good steward of the resources and best meet our academic and our service needs. Certainly, as I indicated, the academic and service unit strategic directions are top of the heap in a prioritization, but there are many other aspects that are considered when developing the 6-year capital plan recommendations and the annual capital budget recommendations. We are an institution that has broad geographic spread. That is a factor. The readiness of a project to move forward, the ability to leverage either the funds to move that project forward or the 1/3 share if it's a state request, the implications for the safety of the structures in which we perform our functions for the university. So a number of factors go into that and help lead to the development of recommendations that are being presented for your review. Each year, institutional leaders are asked to identify their most important priorities. That is reviewed as part of the budget process. And we have taken note of the alignment with the strategic priorities, both at the campuses and the Twin Cities campuses as well. And we are looking to achieve excellence, advance our key strategic priorities, and have the spaces in places that will help us recruit, retain, and promote field-shaping researchers and teachers, and quite frankly, staff and students as well. The objectives that were used to develop this six-year plan are not only to advance those strategic priorities, but to enhance the campus-based experience, align the projects with the revenues necessary to move those projects forward, think strategically about opportunities to increase utilization and the functionality of our physical assets, and to reduce the square footage on our campuses where we are able to do that. And in often cases, we are completing sequences that have been developed over a long period of time, building the nanotechnology building so we can then move on to renovate Tate, that then will allow us to renovate Pillsbury. So you will see elements of that in the plan recommendation as well. Renovating or removing buildings in critical condition will continue to be a top priority for the institution. We will be looking to move our available resources not to prop up and sustain buildings that are at the end of their useful life, but to really reallocate those resources to better enable us to maintain and sustain the functionality and usability of buildings that are much earlier in their life cycle. Advancing the health sciences, there are critical recommendations in the six-year plan to enable us to advance those goals. There are elements of modernization for the St. Paul campus research programs, and across the system you will see that there are investments in our STEM programs. Relative to the critical buildings, HEAPR continues to be a key element for us to advance that strategy, but you will also see that either a reinvestment in or a decommissioning of other buildings that are identified as being in critical condition are a goal of decommissioning and removal of mail. Modernization of the St. Paul campus research facilities. We will be doing more planning work on the investments necessary to update the facilities on the St. Paul campus for the core programs that reside on the St. Paul campus. But you can see in the six-year plan that there are investments that are aimed at that goal already. Investment in STEM programs. We have received an appropriation from the state to begin the design work on a chemistry and advanced materials science building in Duluth. The recommendation before you today will be to request the remaining funds to complete the construction of that building at the Duluth campus. And as well, you will see other investment opportunities in the six-year plan, including a new chemistry teaching laboratory facility in the Minneapolis campus, and that would lead then to also chemistry research laboratory investment possibilities. Aware that there may be additional projects moving forward, but they don't have enough information or detail or have not progressed sufficiently to be included with more specificity on the list. Mr. Chair, Regents, the total for the six-year capital improvement plan is almost $1.3 billion. I apologize about the little notations here, but roughly three-quarters of our resources are state resources for our major capital projects. They are a significant partner for the University of Minnesota, and the remaining share from the university is paid for from multiple sources: fundraising, debt service that's paid from a growth in tuition, where we are expanding programs through the expansion of facilities. So there might be a number of resources that are available to advance the financing of these. Mr. Chair, both my colleague Fitz and I are ready to answer any questions should you have them, and that concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much, Vice President Wheelock. Questions, comments from the board on the six-year capital plan?
Mr. Chair, would you like me to review the annual request as well now?
That'd be very good. Very good. Please proceed, Vice President Wheelock.
I will need some technical assistance in order to do that. Mr. Chair, I will just quickly say in terms of the schedule, we are required to submit a preliminary or tentative list earlier in the summer to the Minnesota Department of Minnesota Management and Budget, and we are required to submit our actual list endorsed by the Regents in October to facilitate the governor's review of the development of proposed capital investments. The legislature will convene in March. We expect that they will be finished sometime in May. It's a little unpredictable, and the conclusion of both the legislative and the gubernatorial decision-making on capital projects will then inform the development of our annual capital budget. So we are here today to present our request that you will then act on next month, and that will form the basis of our recommendation and request to the state. As you can see, HEAPR continues to top the list. We have certainly several $1 billion of opportunities to invest in our facilities and extend their useful life. $100 million is what we are requesting in this next legislative session and to the governor, followed by, and this is in rank order, followed by an investment request to actually complete the construction of the Chemistry and Advanced Material Sciences project in Duluth, advance the first phase for our AHC or Health Sciences investments, which is for Health Sciences Education Facility on the Minneapolis campus. And then the Plant Growth Research Facility. This is the project that has been on the list several times. We have sometimes referred to it as a greenhouse, although that is somewhat of a misnomer because it fails to convey the complexity of a space where we need to have separate systems and controls to advance the research that will vary in that facility and needs to be tailored to the individual research. Academic and student experience investments, this is system-wide. There are resources that are being recommended for each of our campuses, $4 million for each of the system campuses and $12 million for the Twin Cities campus. The Twin Cities campus is expected to be an investment primarily in the St. Paul campus laboratory facilities update. And then, though it's been on their 6-year plan previously, this is the first time that the Pillsbury Hall renovation will be on a state request, because with the completion of Tate, Earth Sciences will move out of Pillsbury, enabling us to renovate that building, which is an important building on our campus for the English department and other functions. So we are very excited that that is moving forward for the first time to the legislature as well. The total request is just over $300 million. The state share, given the 100% financing of HEAPR by the state, is $236.3 million, and the University of Minnesota share would be $68.1 million. Mr. Chair, I could go through each of these in more detail. That information is in your packet, and so I think what I will do is just hold for any questions that you may have on either these individual projects or the 6-year capital plan elements.
Very good. Thank you, Vice President Wheelock. Comments, questions, please. Regent Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering how many of these projects have had previous funding to get them off the starting block?
Mr. Chair, Regent Lucas, the two projects that have had some previous funding are the state appropriation that occurred in, I'm trying to remember which legislative session it was. I believe it was in 15. Actually, I believe it was 14 for the first phase or the design phase for the Duluth project, so that the previous funding invested in that was $2.25 million, and so the total project cost for that project will be $43 million if this funding is advanced. For the AHC Phase 1, we didn't actually receive an appropriation. We actually received authorization with the refinancing of the TCF bonds to use $10 million of that to advance the planning and design for the health sciences facilities. And I believe, other than investing some institutional resources to advance a pre-design, for example, Pillsbury, we are finishing a pre-design right now. There's no other significant appropriation of funds for any of these projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further, Regent Simmons, please.
I just would want to make a comment about one of the projects, and that is the Pillsbury Hall. There isn't always excitement about remodeling, but we have quite a few alumni from CLA at our largest school, and I would think they could be a wonderful force to help make the case for the Pillsbury Hall renovation project.
Further questions? Vice President Wheelock, a question on the health science education facility. Location, any demolition of existing buildings? What is the plan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That plan is still under development, but I think there is general interest in looking at some reinvestment in some of the important space in the AHC campus area right now, PWB, Weaver Densford, and the idea that we would supplement a reinvestment in existing space with some new construction by removing or demolishing potentially both VFW and Masonic. So it would be a combination of renovation of existing space and construction of a new front door and some new space.
Thank you. Regent Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question about how we determine where to invest HEAPR money, and what happens if we don't get the full request, then how do we prioritize our investments?
Yeah.
Vice President Wheelock.
Mr. Chair, Regent Hsu, HEAPR funding is, there's an allocation for each of the system campuses roughly based on square footage and population, so it's a system-wide investment. We get input from each of the system campuses about their HEAPR priority. It's a little bit of a dynamic process in two respects. One is we also look to see how we can coordinate that with other planned investments in a space. So if there is a plan to do a window replacement on a building or an HVAC update, but we also know that the department that occupies that space is planning to do a refresh of their lab space in another 18 months, we may kind of coordinate the scheduling of those investments so that we can reduce the disruption that will occur in any given space. So we get input as well from each of the campuses to allow us to better coordinate the timing of that. The other element that is harder to predict is what is the actual size of the appropriation. So we might do different scenarios and the system campuses as well, because depending on the actual appropriation, any one project could potentially take up almost too high of a percentage and not allow for necessary investments in other projects. So that project may end up waiting to another year, or it may be phased work instead of progressing all at one time. Our preference, though, is to try to coordinate as many of the improvements in a physical space at one time. So while the walls are open, we'll update the electrical and the HVAC system instead of coming back and disrupting the use of that space unnecessarily multiple times. So it really is a bit of a dynamic process, but it really starts with the criticality of the space itself and its relationship to the importance of the use of that facility to advance programmatic priorities.
Thank you. Regent Hsu.
Just a quick follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I noticed from looking at the campus maps that we have, and there's a lot of red, which is bad. How are we going to have enough money to bring those buildings back up to whatever level we need to have them at? I think yellow at minimum, right?
Mr. Chair, Regent Hsu, yes, in your progress card, I believe you just discussed as one of the elements the desire to actually reduce the amount of square footage in poor or critical condition over a period of time. There are multiple ways to do that, including the decommissioning of space. The university has actually removed buildings, and we are in the process now, at least starting on the Twin Cities campus, to start the development of a building-by-building investment strategy so that we can be more intentional about at what point has a facility extended beyond its useful life, and should we stop investing in kind of propping up certain structures. Really the poster child for that is Mayo at 867,000 square feet. That in and of itself would be a significant reduction on the Twin Cities campuses about the number of square feet in critical or poor condition, and with the investment in the health sciences in some of our core buildings there as well. Those investment opportunities and that decommissioning would make a big difference. But it is evaluating where the building is in its life cycle, its relationship about significance on the campus. Is it a historic building? Is it on the historic wall or knoll? And its relevance and importance and flexibility to be adapted for critical academic or institutional priorities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, comments? May I make an editorial comment? I think it's imperative upon each of us as board members to advocate with our local legislators on this plan, provide some information. The morning report says there's 113 million more in the state coffers. There is a huge amount of reserve, and I think the University of Minnesota would do well to receive a portion of that through the bonding bill. And we work with staff, and Mr. President, we support all of your efforts in working with the governor and with legislative leaders. So, very good, thank you. Any further comments on the 6-year plan? Now, thank you very much to the two of you for your very good work. We now turn to committee reports. We'll begin with the report on Audit and Compliance Committee. Regent Broad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one action item for the board, the consent report. We had review and action. The committee unanimously recommended ratification of an emergency approval to retain external legal counsel and establish an oversight committee related to the investigation and oversight of the athletics department. I move to ratify the emergency approval.
It is moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Discussion. Discussion on the motion. Regent Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question pertains to whether or not there needs to be a budget associated with this investigation, and if so, how we set it, and if we need to modify it, how we would do that.
Regent Hsu, the President just stepped out. Could we just delay that motion and come back to that? I want the President to be able to weigh in on that. Would you be amenable to that?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to withdraw my motion?
Withdraw your motion.
Or we can table it subject to his return.
I'll just withdraw it. It's fine.
Okay, very good. And proceed with the remaining part of your report.
Mr. Chairman, we also had a number of discussion items. We discussed the committee name change. You'll notice that this year it's audit and compliance. This change emphasizes an important component of our existing committee work, but it's an opportunity for us to elevate the role of compliance and the connection of compliance in the Board of Regents and give increased emphasis to this area in our work plan this year. We will consider formal adoption of the name change in the charter committee or in the committee charter later this year, following the administration's evaluation of and recommendations related to the university's institutional compliance functions. We also had an update on the implementation of the Human Research Protection Program work plan, and the committee received this update by Vice President Herman, and we'll discuss this topic at each of our committee meetings this year. Implementation is currently progressing as expected, and a dashboard is included in the September 2015 progress report. I would also emphasize that this work is not done. We are just at the beginning of this implementation with implementing the necessary changes, and we want to make sure that we stay on top, this stays on top of mind while this work occurs, and that's why we'll be seeing it at every board audit committee meeting in the upcoming year. We also had, as we discussed this morning, an external assessment of the University of Minnesota data security program in our maturity, and we wrapped up our 3-part discussion on data security. I won't go further into that because we heard much of what we discussed at the meeting. We also talked about today. It's critical, however, that the ownership for compliance, as Regent Simmons says appropriately, staying on top of the compliance at the local level is significant in terms of our approach. We heard an internal audit update, and on internal audits performed by the Office of Internal Audit since June 2015. While the implementation rate continues to be lower than we would like, approximately 50% of the recommendations associated with the audits were receiving their first follow-up. We're going to stay as a committee on top of that to drive that number in terms of the implementation rate up. Also, many of the recommendations related to compliance were also related to new technology standards that generally take a little longer to address than others. We'll continue to closely monitor the implementation rate, and we have a few touch points that we have requested in order to do so. The committee also fully supported Associate Vice President Klatt's recommendation that her team continue to follow up and verify that audit recommendations are fully implemented rather than rely solely on management assurances. While moving away from this practice would gain efficiencies for the audit team, the committee agreed that the verification was worth the time and resources required. In other information items, the Audit Committee received the Controller's semi-annual report. And Mr. Chairman, I would renew my motion to approve the consent report.
Is there a second?
Okay.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Regent Hsu, you had a question.
Not on this.
Yep, we're back on your
We're back.
Oh, you're back on my question? Okay. Thank you. I had a question about how we're going to handle the budget for the investigation.
Mr. President.
Chair Johnson, Regent Hsu, sure. The Office of General Counsel routinely engages external expertise when needed. There's a budget there to do that. I doubt we would need a budget amendment, and I also doubt that the bill will be over $1 million, so it would not require regentral approval for purchase of goods and services.
Great, thank you.
On the motion, further discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevailed. Thank you, Regent Broad. We now turn to Academic and Student Affairs Committee. Regent Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. First, for an action item, the committee unanimously recommends approval of the consent report, which includes program additions, changes, and discontinuations. I move adoption of that consent report.
There's a motion.
I'll second that.
There's motion and second. Discussion. Further discussion. Any discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevailed.
We had some discussion items. In non-action items, the committee had two rich presentations. The first item was the annual report on undergraduate, graduate, and professional academic program changes. We heard a brief overview of the changes approved by the board over the past year. We also heard about the process used to develop new academic programs, and then heard two real-life examples. The first example was within the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resource Sciences. CFANS increased their focus on interdisciplinary offerings and was able to restructure 4 majors into 2 new interdisciplinary majors. They also increased the elective credits within those majors to allow additional flexibility for students and keep them on track to graduate in 4 years, even if they change their majors midstream. We also heard about several new programs in various stages of development at this Carlson School of Management to increase enrollment in several key majors and to tap into new markets with an innovative new program, an industry MBA. Overall, we were very impressed by the care, effort, and consultation that go into the proposals that come before the board. It is clear that the faculty is working to be responsive to student and market demands while maintaining the integrity and excellence of the programs. Our second item gave us a look at the preparations for the upcoming accreditation visit in October for the Twin Cities and Rochester campuses. Vice Provost McMaster provided a helpful overview of the accreditation process and criteria, and then we heard from faculty in the College of Liberal Arts and the College of Biological Sciences about how they assess student learning. The assessment process is intentionally highly flexible given the wide array of programs across the university. So we were interested to see the different approaches these two colleges have taken to set specific criteria and develop quantifiable assessments. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Cohen. Regent McMillan, report of the Facilities Planning and Operations Committee.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The Facilities Planning and Operations Committee met Yesterday, we have 3 action items to bring to the board, and the first of those is the schematics for a schematic plan for the Bell Museum, which will there now will be a 90,000 square foot facility housing permanent traveling exhibits, planetarium, classroom, retail, food services, flexible shelved spaces, dioramas from the current Bell, and a overall visitor experience that is aimed at what future visitors to museums want. Before I bring that to the board for action, I've asked Vice Chair Tom Devine to provide a little more color for the board around this important matter.
Regent Devine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just kind of note today that this is the end of a 12-year journey on a very involved project. We've been chartered by the state of Minnesota back in 1874 to work collaboratively with the state as a depository for the state's natural sciences, and we've fulfilled that mission. This all fulfills, our greater outreach mission as a land-grant school. And obviously all of us know on campus here, there's tens of thousands of school children that make their journey to the Bell Museum. And as a result of that, we've impacted the state in a variety of different ways. What's exciting about this project is it's a new front door to the St. Paul campus, and that we've now got a revitalized, I guess you might say, commitment to the St. Paul campus relative to having the location of this facility there. There's obviously continued design work that's continuing right now to finish the designs, and there's one aspect that hasn't been completed that I'm hopeful that we'll continue to focus on, which is the outdoor exhibits areas that the DNR and the state and the university hope to further expand as part of the project. It's been a significant collaboration project with the state and with a number of stakeholders, and I think it's appropriate right now to recognize the fact that the facilities staff, the St. Paul campus faculty and staff have been involved in it, as well as the hard work of the Bell Board over this entire 12 years. And then finally, I'd just like to pay recognition to Representative Alice Hausman, who's been with the project for all 12 years, and her important leadership that she's provided, and I guess you might say the drive within the legislature to make sure that this project did come about for the benefit of the people of Minnesota. And I know that her work individually with each of you individually and lobbying you and trying to bring about her vision is appreciated now at this point that we're now going to approve the project and move forward with it. So with that, thank you. I pass back to Chairman McMillan.
Thank you, Regent Devine. Regent McMillan.
Thank you, Regent Devine, and your attention, commitment, and passion for this project is extraordinary. We're all grateful, and there's several other regents around the board table today that have played significant roles as well in bringing together what is undoubtedly a unique and perhaps one of the most stakeholder-bound projects that we've worked on. More stakeholders of varying interests. So with that, I move approval of the schematic plans for the Bell Museum of Natural History on the Twin Cities campus.
So move.
Second.
Mr. Regent McMillan has moved, and we have dual second. Okay. Discussion on the motion regard to the Bell Museum. Any discussion? If Regent Hsu.
I know this project has been through a process, an abnormal process, if that's the right term, and I know that there are. I mean, it's a state-funded project with $3.5 million appropriation. I hope that when we finance this thing that we can use all of that money for construction. I know that there are some issues with the cost of construction going up during the planning process, and I hope that we can get as much into the building as possible.
Very good. Thank you. Further discussion. On the motion, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion prevailed. Regent McMillan.
And now in a related matter, the committee also voted unanimously to recommend approval of the capital budget amendment related to the Bell Museum, which was originally at 53 or almost 54. million, and since that time increased by about $10.5 million to a total of $64.2 million, and the committee brings that, I move that approval of the capital budget amendment.
There's a motion, second? Second. Been motion and second. In regard to the motion, discussion, comments? Any discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevailed. Regent McMillan.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Our third item for action today is schematic design approval for the resident dining hall renovation on the Duluth campus, which was put in place 40 years ago and has some personal historical significance to me. About 3 or 4 years into its life, I took my first sustenance as a student on that campus, moving from Griggs Hall on my way to the academic buildings. I wandered in there and was fed, and it hasn't changed a lot since, so it is in considerable need of improvement. The committee approved the plans to completely renovate those 19,000 square feet and improve efficiency, better food menus, fresher foods, faster service, and quite impressively, the $5.25 million that renovation will cost is funded from revenues that the Duluth Dining Services have put aside to prepare for it. So I think kudos to that set of operators up there for that. So I move approval of the schematic plans for the resident renovation on the Duluth campus.
So move.
Been moved and seconded in regard to Duluth dining renovation. Further comments? Any discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevailed. Regent McMillan.
Thank you. The couple of other discussion items I needn't go into, as Regent Broad noted in her report. We spent quite a bit of time yesterday on the 6-year capital plan, as they did on cybersecurity. So you've all heard that, the 2016 capital request. Vice President Wheelock walked through the elements of that as part of a broader long-range planning discussion about how we prioritize and allocate scarce resources between competing needs. And that was the first of a couple pieces of conversation we'll have around that. We had an update from Interim Athletic Director Beth Getz about the final stages of the schematic design for the Athletes Village, which will come before the board next month. She noted that a little over $5 million, or just under $5 million in additional fundraising has come in. And she reviewed plans and outlines for a Minneapolis East Bank competition level track facility that they are working on. So that was a good update. And then lastly, we walked through the work plan for 2015-16, and I think it's important to note that this committee is no longer the Facilities and Operations Committee. It's the Facilities Planning and Operations Committee, which is reflective of some of the board's priorities, and what you'll find if you delve into the work plan is quite a bit of discussion around planning. And I also want to note, again, Vice Chair Devine's considerable input into helping build a work plan for 2015-16 that works for Vice President Wheelock and gets at some of the priorities for this board. So it's been a great process. And information items that I needn't review here wrapped up our agenda, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent McMillan. Regent Devine, a comment?
I'd just like to make one comment relative to an item that David just said about the track. I would like to thank the President publicly for his leadership in bringing all the parties together and resolving the track issue and moving forward with a very important aspect of what we're doing as part of the overall athletic village. And it's been a years-long discussion about what we should do and how we should go about it, but publicly there was a lot of leadership, there was a lot of work that went on to bring that about, and the staff work that Vice President Wheelock and her group put together to bring this all together. And the announcement yesterday by our interim athletic director, Getz, was an important step forward. And I just recognize and appreciate that effort that was put forth.
Thank you, Regent Devine. On behalf of the Faculty and Staff Affairs Committee, Regent Simmons.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. For review and action by the board, the committee unanimously recommends approval of the collective bargaining agreement between the university and Minnesota State Building and Construction Trades Council on behalf of the craft and trade employees of the university. This agreement would be effective through June 30th, 2018. I move approval of the bargaining agreement.
Second. There's a motion and second before us. Discussion. Discussion on the motion. If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion prevailed. Regent Simmons.
Thank you. The committee unanimously recommends approval of the consent report, which includes conferral of tenure for one internal and 2 external hires, a proposed change to Article 7 of the Civil Service Senate Constitution, and the appointment of Professor Jeffrey Peterson to the Minnesota Clean Water Council. I move adoption of the consent report.
It's been moved and seconded on the motion. Discussion? Discussion? If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion prevailed. Regent Simmons.
Thank you. You only have to take a look at the President's work plan, our tracking sheet, the board's priorities, and the strategic plan to realize how important the discussion our committee had on university leadership development. We need good leaders to do all of this. And our discussion included hearing about initiatives from the Provost's office, which include a program for new leaders. It includes collaborations with the Committee on Institutional Cooperation and a program called Talking Heads, piloted last year and already showing very strong interest and good results. In addition, there's collaboration with the Office of Human Resources and between them and the Provost's office, and programs emanating from there that we heard about include the Office of Human Resources helping leaders and management teams develop customized approaches to addressing their challenges, like navigating leadership transitions, something very sensitive, very important to do well. Our discussion concluded with a case study presented by Dean Brian Burr of CFANS. Dean Burr discussed the reorganization of leadership in his department, in his college, and the work they've done to create competency-based leadership. He reported that leadership team has shown improved engagement, process clarity, and more efficient decision-making, all great accomplishments. Given the impact on the institution, the committee will continue to discuss and monitor leadership development to ensure that university leaders have the tools and the training necessary to be effective. They have big, important jobs. The committee had a compelling conversation on something we also know is an administration and board priority, and that is about compensation. We focused on compensation principles, highlighting the need for the committee and this board to review and further continue the conversation and development of our policies on compensation. For background, we reviewed last spring's compensation report and our current board policy that includes compensation principles. We then heard from an external expert, Mr. John Adams from Towers Watson, and as he discussed trends and realities of compensation practices in higher education across the United States, he made the case that strong compensation principles are essential to move our thinking from a transactional to a more strategic process. Guiding principles will provide an important context for the decisions and the directions the administration and this board will make, and help us have and adopt a compensation philosophy to move us forward. Questions put on the table by the committee for this board include how we best match our policy with the realities of the market, with the goals we have, with our needs for recruitment and retention of highly qualified people at every level. And we look forward as a committee to engaging with the full board and with the president on this important topic. And finally, we also discussed our plan and made certain that we aligned our work plan with the priorities of this board and the elements of the strategic plan that we have already endorsed going forward. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Regent Simmons. Next, report on the Finance Committee, Regent Beeson.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. We had two action items that we discussed and approved at the committee level. First is a resolution related to issue of debt, and that is on the James Ford Bell Natural History Museum and Planetarium in the Twin City campus. The committee recommends approval to authorize issuance of fixed-rate debt to refinance the taxable commercial paper Series E issued December 2014. The original project cost was $57.5 million, with $51.5 million funded with university debt and $6 million of non-debt funding. The estimated cost is now increased by $6,725,000, totaling $64,225,000 due to changes in building design. Restructuring of the debt will result in additional proceeds to cover a portion of the increased cost of the project. The resolution authorizes issuance up to $56.9 million of university debt. The amount required will depend on the mix of taxable and tax-exempt debt that is issued. And for the record, going back to Regent Hsu's comment, a question that is, Mr. Fitzgerald agreed yesterday that if we're lucky in the bond market and able to issue the bonds at a rate lower than that which is projected and giving us cash flow below the amount that the state is giving us for the project, we'll come back to the board with an administration recommendation on how to utilize those dollars in the project. So I would move approval of the resolution related to the issuance of the debt.
We have a motion, a second. Discussion. Discussion on the motion. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevailed. Regent Beeson.
Consent report was the second action item, and the committee recommends approval of the consent report, which includes the purchase of goods and services over $1 million, and I move adoption of that report.
There's a motion. Second. There's a second. Discussion. Discussion on the motion. If not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevailed. Regent Beeson.
Discussion items, university tax compliance activities and programs. The committee discussed the tax compliance activities and programs of the university's tax management office. A conversation focused on the balance between the areas of the university that are tax exempt and those areas used by organizations that are not. This includes balancing the type of bonds issued, monitoring post-issuance tax matters and compliance. The board also heard about the consultation coordination with other units that the tax management office provides across the university. Then discussed the annual asset management report from Associate Vice President and Chief Investment Officer Stuart Mason. As of June 30th, 2015, the invested assets of the university totaled $2,400 million. The consolidated endowment fund value as of June 30th, 2015 was $1,293,600,000, an increase of $21.1 million over the last year after distributions of $48.6 million. The investment return for the consolidated endowment fund was up 5.7% over the last year compared to benchmark return of 2.1%. The university also invested $50 million in a fund that reduces exposure to public companies with high carbon emissions and reserves. The investment was made in alignment with recent changes to our policy of the endowment fund. Next was the financial components of the President's recommended 2015 six-year capital plan and the 2016 capital request. The committee reviewed the financial components of said plan. The item was covered in detail earlier, as you know, and I won't go into any further detail. Finally, a couple information items that we received to information packets. One was a quarterly purchasing report, and second was detail regarding issuance of debt 2015 A and B. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Beeson. Regent Cohen, on behalf of the Governance and Policy Committee.
The committee did not meet this month, so no report.
Very good. Thank you. Litigation Review Committee, Regent Devine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Litigation Review Committee met on September 10th, 2015. The addition of 3 more regents to the committee this year is new, and there was discussion of the work plan items to be reviewed during the year. After reviewing the General Counsel's annual report, the committee approved a resolution that authorized the closing of the meeting. In the closed meeting, there was a discussion that was held of matters that are subject to the attorney-client privilege. The meeting was adjourned.
Thank you, Regent Devine. Is there any old business? Is there any old business to come before the board? Is there any new business? Any new business? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. And moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.